This is my part 3 in Bhagavad Gita lessons. Um, I'm sorry for those of you who are interested in political content. I have taken a little bit of a pause from politics. I'm on spring break, so I don't really want to bog my brain down. But today I wanted to talk about attachment in further detail in a different context. Um, I said earlier, and I'll say it again, that the point of this series is to engage with the Americans, the youths of Generation Z, who are feeling lost in the, sort of obscure and overwhelming cycle of day-to-day life, modern life in America. So, without further ado, I guess we'll get started. I want to start off with a quote from chapter 2, verse 47. It reads, "You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty." Simply put, Krishna is teaching that attachment to the result causes suffering. This is nothing new. This is not revolutionary if you've been watching my videos. But that second part is really fascinating to me. The idea that duty itself is sacred. So I really wanted to talk about, all these sort of things, right? A big thing I see with Gen Z is, these constant cycles of relationships like any other generation. And, since we're young, since we're fresh and looking to explore, relationships come and go. And the challenge for many people is moving on. How do I move on? How do I stop thinking about a person? The quote unquote, person living in my head rent free. How do I stop that? This video serves to offer an answer to that. So, with this context, with this quote, love can be a part of duty. If it lines with, righteousness, the idea that, doing is what is just and fair and ethical and reasonable, doing something because it's in the mode of goodness, this idea that the action itself is truly fulfilling. So the sense I wanted to prove to this is instead of quote unquote moving on from your ex, your friend who left you, or friend you grew apart from, or whatever the case is, instead of moving on in a modern sense, Krishna here is suggesting that we have to transform this attachment into a selfless devotion, otherwise called bhakti. Now, this is crazy to speak, right? Obviously, for those of you who have exes who have cheated or, dare I say, even abuse, of course, you don't want to interact with these people. You don't want to talk to these people. That is all fine and dandy. I would go as far as to say someone who's really lied behind your back in a monumental way, other than cheating. Obviously, cheating is a form of lying, but something like that, you want to move on. But Krishna advises us instead to say, hey, look, let's suggest that we transform this attachment. This idea of like wanting to move on as quickly as possible, getting these people outside of our heads, that in itself is actually attachment. That itself is, not good. You're attaching to yourself to say, hey, look, my life won't be complete until I stop thinking about this person. My life won't be fulfilled. I won't be able to do what I want to do if I stop thinking about this person. You've come to find out that you cannot stop thinking about this person. The more you stop thinking about them, the more you try to not think about them, the more they occupy your mind. So we know now that, okay, instead of saying, hey, look, I'm going to stop thinking about them, that doesn't really work. But then, he advises us that we transform it to selfless devotion, bhakti. That in itself is kind of crazy, and we're going to expand upon this. In chapter 3, verse 25, Krishna says, "As the ignorant act with attachment to results, so the wise should act without attachment, desiring the welfare of the world. Um, what this basically says is if your love is going to be based on desire, ego, personal gain, it's attachment. If it's selfless, then that's in the mode of goodness, then that's divine. So you should really ask yourself, should you let go of someone, or should you elevate yourself, elevate your love into something beyond personal attachment? Love is not an action. Love is not a feeling. Rather, it's a state of being. I'm a loving person. Be love. You have to be love. You don't just pick and choose. Okay, I love this person more than I love that person. This is my bestest friend. This is my closest friend. This is my, you know what I mean? That in itself is what he's trying to say. Now, does that mean, I'm gonna fondle over every stranger I come across the street? No, you're thinking of a material nature then. What you are trying to think, and what you should think of, is that everybody, you know, has a piece of God within them. Everybody has God. Everybody has soul. The divine, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has that within them. Great Zach Bryan verse. He's not a great person, but he has a good verse in Burn, 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 where he goes, he sees God in everything. And that's really what Krishna is trying to tell you. It's like God is within everything. Treat everything like God, or approach everything like God, with a kind of net zero, selfless kind of act to it. So now you talk about loss, right? A lot of people are very sad immediately when they lose someone in their life for a host of reasons. Most obvious would be the person has passed away, the person has died. Krishna offers a quote in chapter 2, verse 13: just as the soul experiences childhood, youth, and old age in this body, so too it will acquire another body. The wise are not deluded by these changes. This in itself just tells you, hey, the process of reincarnation, everything, including your relationships, evolves, but the soul is going to remain constant. So, when someone is lost from you, they're not gone. Their absence is not gone. Their soul, their livelihood is eternal, 100%. That's more for you who have lost people in your life, because their physical body is gone. But now, and this is the crux of my little piece tonight, is, how can we transform this suffering that we experience of loss from, maybe a breakup, maybe it's someone passing away. How do we transform this into growth? And I like the verse in chapter 6, verse 5, and it reads, let a man lift himself by himself. Let him not degrade himself, for the self alone is the friend of the self, and the self alone is the enemy of the self. There's a lot of self there. It could be one of those tongue twisters. She sells. I can't even do it. But basically what Krishna says is your emotions are your responsibility. Love should be an empowering force, not a weakening force. So instead of moving on, what if you transform your heartbreak into personal growth? It's very possible. We are the ones who are, at the end of the day, when we're at our bedside saying, you know what, I'm a happy person, I'm a sad person, my life is not complete, or my life is complete. With that logic in mind, you are all that you need to feel happy, to feel loved, to feel loving, to be complete in this world. And I think people have been deluded by that heavily. That, beyond breakups, beyond, people dying that were close to you, external forces, external objects, or external abstract ideas like validation or notoriety have been tools to infiltrate our minds to say, hey, look, my notoriety is somehow tangentially related to my well-being, and that the more notorious, the more famous, the more validated, the more friends I have, whatever the case is, the more happy I am with myself. I think a good little thought experiment is the idea that, you know, if someone were to have a smile on their face and speak a completely different language, you would assume that what they're saying is nice, but they could be cursing up a storm on you, right? It goes to show that the words that people say out of their mouths are just words. There are just sounds. They're phonetically made sounds, and we're the one who put that in our brain and say, okay, we're going to make meaning out of this, and we're going to ascribe it to that person. Obviously, language exists. I'm not denying that, but that concept alone should give you a good idea of what it means to be detached from these ideas, this external force. With that being said, I guess to tie this up in a nice little bow, for those of you who are losing, maybe not having many friends, lost a loved one, broke up with someone, whatever the case is, understanding that you are completely capable enough. You yourself is all that you need to be happy. Um, Suffering itself is a very material, kind of elusive kind of idea. And I think the main crux of the argument is that there is no moving on. It's a hoax, I guess, if you want to call it that. Instead of saying, you know what, I want to stop thinking about this person, all you should say maybe is, I'm a loving person and I'm going to move on with love. I think it works. With that being said, thank you for watching. I've been going on for way too long. Okay, good night, y'all.